All right, so theoretically we should be live now. I'm going to move this over here so you guys don't have to look at that. Sherlock, how are you? Hey Tiger, how you doing tonight? It's been a long night, so I figured I would talk about a couple of tech topics and let my hair down, my gray hair. You know, I never really thought about that. I never set up any kind of Litecoin or Bitcoin account. I'm going to have to look into that. Have you done it before, Gray? I'm going to see, as soon as we get a couple more people, we'll get started. What about Bitcoin, or what's the other one that's getting popular? Ether? I don't know if anybody's done that. I have never donated any kind of Bitcoin, Litecoin. Loaf wallet or Load wallet. Oh, nice. Been thinking about looking into mining, but I really don't have a system for it, so I'm not sure if I'm going to do any mining. I do? That's cool. Well, you won't have to look at too many things going on the screen. I'll try to talk about everything that we're looking at. So, technically speaking, I suppose we could turn this into audio only. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Although I heard Bitcoin took a hit in the market, so it's dropping now. But if you think about it, although Bitcoin is harder to mine, you can mine less, and technically you're making more money. It really just depends on how difficult it is to mine Bitcoin now. Whenever any of the different types of currency, cryptocurrency, get popular, of course, unfortunately, it becomes more and more difficult to mine the currency. It is, that's true. So, yeah, I don't really deal in cryptocurrency yet, but I still have the Patreon page, and I'll be looking to expand different ways to donate if you're interested. It's really up to you. You know, I'm not sure. I have an intro for Patreon on my videos, and I'm not sure how my viewers are taking that. I've considered leaving it in, and I've also considered taking it out. I'm really not sure at this point what I'm going to do yet. Really? 17,000? I don't know, Ryan. I guess it's up to you. Again, I don't really have a system for it, but I'm not looking to make a ton of money off of it. I think if I'm going to get into it, I'll approach it as a project and just see if I can learn anything from it and try to turn at least a few pennies. Yeah. What? Grace says Patreon has censored some of my favorite creators. Ooh, that's scary. That is a problem. I actually had a topic I was going to talk about tonight, but I took it off because I know if I talk about that topic, I will automatically lose money on the video. So, you know, with YouTube, unfortunately, demonetization is just a fact of life. Basically, all of my videos now are getting demonetized for the first couple days. And if there's certain topics I talk about, they're permanently demonetized. I shouldn't say demonetized, but very little advertising. So you know, some of the topics I tend to avoid. Yeah, I know how you're feeling about the touchscreens, Tyler. Sherlock, it wasn't a strike. It's just a demonetization where you see an orange $sign, which basically means little or no advertisers will be interested in this video because of the topical content. And it's very unfortunate. I always challenge it, but I have to get 1,000 views on my video before they'll even take a look at it. The odd thing is, even if it does get flagged as demonetized, usually my videos within 1 or 2 days, it self-corrects. So I don't know if the algorithm has a second look or what's going on, but I mean, it's not like I'm making big bucks anyway off of it, but you know, it's kind of nice to have that first few days actually get the money from the views. It does. Right. Use different keywords. Good idea. I mean, in the title, in the description, in the actual video, all those goodies. Yes. So what I wanted to talk about today, I've got, what do we got? 7 watching. You know what I really should do? And I'm thinking more and more on this is I probably should start doing a regular live stream. Right now, my life isn't really that predictable, so I tend to just do it when I can, but I'm thinking I'm going to set something up where I do a live stream probably Friday nights or Saturday nights, maybe 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So Eastern Standard Time would be around 8 or 9. That gives the West Coasters a chance to get out of work and join if they want to do that. Oh, cool, Gray. You know, the thing you mentioning Fedora, I have tried quite a few other distros, and I'm not going to say that there's a problem with them. You know, I know many people like Ubuntu, and I think Ubuntu is a good distribution, and it's reliable and stable, and that's the thing. It just happens that I like Fedora because I'm used to the ecosystem and how things work. There are subtle differences. They're not huge, but they're there. And I kind of grew up in the whole IT universe with Red Hat initially and then Fedora Project. And I just got used to it. So it's kind of what I know best, so I tend to work with it because it's what I know. Anyway, have you guys heard, I'm sure you've heard about Meltdown and Spectre. I wanted to get your take on it. Here's what I'm thinking. Yeah, CentOS is really good for servers. Absolutely. Meltdown and Spectre, it kind of disappointed me. I understand that processors all the way back to 1995 are in danger of being susceptible to these particular bugs. The good news is there are patches for both of them. The bad news is we could take a performance hit, and the research that I've done, the reading that I've done, we're looking at anywhere, depending on what you're doing, a 30 to 50% performance hit, or in some circumstances you may see none at all. It just really depends. Tyler, I agree. YouTube does need to relax. I'm not going to say that word. Content that is controversial. We're talking about computers, for crying out loud. How bad can it be? Anyway, it's pretty amazing how these two bugs work. They can literally contaminate and invade memory space and break down some of the walls in the case of Meltdown. And they can get into protected memory and access portions of memory on your system that they shouldn't be accessing. There are a few. We're going to have a look at them. We'll talk about a couple. So, who said that anyway? Let's see. Sherlock. Anybody besides Intel and AMD that makes processors? Not really. There used to be a company called Cyrix or Cyrix, depending on how you want to pronounce it, and they're pretty much gone. Now, IBM did used to produce their own RISC processors, and there actually is a, I'm not going to call it open source, but an open processor called RISC-V that's being developed. And we're going to talk in a minute if there's a possibility of the world changing to open source processors. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to go with no on that. Here's why. Let me switch over to this screen. Can we replace Intel x86 with an open source chip? There's many reasons why I don't really see it as likely. When I think of open source, I'm thinking that mainly we're talking about software, and the cool thing about software is it's developed in the ether, so to speak. So yes, people give their time to develop it, and some do not really get a reward, so at least financially. And now there are companies that help develop open source. Google's a good example, IBM, Microsoft. Why do they do that? Well, they can actually make use of that source code just like anybody else. In the case of Google, they're going to use it in their servers. So they spend time and they spend human resources letting their developers actually work on open source code. The problem with an open source processor, the intellectual property, yes, I could see where we could have an open processor design, I would say, or at least the kernel code. But the problem is really, if you think about it, how are we going to pay for that processor? I tend to equate open source with free. Now, that may be incorrect of me, but would you be willing to buy a processor that you know doesn't have the development and the power behind it, such as Intel or AMD, and therefore the process might be more rudimentary or more basic? It may not perform as well as the Intel processors or the AMD processors. You may find things slower like gaming or heavy-duty processing like video editing or some of the other tools that we use. Would that be of benefit to us? That's the thing I'm trying to think. Yes, Qualcomm does make processors for mobile devices. That's true. But would they use their fabrication facilities to actually host and produce this open source processor? Now, one of the things here the writer talked about is, would IBM be interested in doing this? IBM, I believe, still has some manufacturing facilities, but I really don't think they have enough, so it would be very difficult for them to produce processors at this point. In other words, if you did get an open source processor, you're going to have to pay. It's possible it could cost more than an Intel processor or an AMD processor, and unfortunately, it probably wouldn't be competitive in terms of performance. So I can't see me personally buying an open source processor if they do come to light. And how are we going to justify producing these things if nobody will buy them? Yeah, if they could make money, Sherlock. I really wish we could open source everything. One of my big pet peeves with Intel is to have the management engine built into the processor like they do, which is in essence a whole nother processor on top of your Intel processor that can access all of the hardware and, quite frankly, everything that's going on the real processor. So to me, that's a major security risk. Now, Intel used Minix, which is an open source operating system, and they closed that particular die, the processor that's on your chip. So you cannot have access to it, and nobody is allowed to see what changes were made to the Minix operating system that's sitting there right on your processor die. That's really scary. Really? Now, I haven't tried 1804 out. Is it really up to 1804? I thought it was 1704, game dev. Maybe I'm behind the times. Possibly. So there is this project, the RISC-V project. You might want to take a look at it. Berkeley is developing their own processor, which means there could be fabrication, but I could see a limited run. We may not be able to even get access to these processors for a little while. Well, I say a little while, but I'm thinking probably years. Oh, it is 18.4. Okay. That's right. 1710 was the last stable. Yep. Okay. So anyway, with Intel and the processor bugs, the CEO of Intel has said there will be no recalls. Are you surprised? I'm not. I can't imagine there being recalls for processors. Just imagine the sheer scale. Every computer since 1995, who's going to send their processors in? It's not going to happen. I don't see it as being very likely at all. There are a whole bunch of class action lawsuits. You know you're going to get it in the mail asking you to join the class action lawsuit. And what's going to happen? You're going to get this piece of paper that tells you you can join a class action lawsuit because you purchased a computer or a processor that was affected by these two bugs. And what are you going to get in the long run? A coupon for $3.27 to buy your new processor in the future. I mean, what's the point? But aside from that, I know the point really is to basically adjudicate and show these companies that if you do something like this, you could be faced with stiff penalties, which on the surface, we could be talking about millions or even billions of dollars. Did Intel not act in good faith when they designed these processors? They did act in good faith. Did they know the bugs existed? Probably not. Did they offer a remedy for you that, although does cause a performance hit, it does make your processor secure and fully operational? Yes, they did. Are these lawsuits likely to go through and actually hurt Intel in the long run? Possibly. We would have to show damages, though. That's the thing about lawsuits. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but in order for a lawsuit to actually go through, what is the damage to the organizations that use these processors? We could say, yes, there was a problem. We lost performance, and performance, as everybody knows, or as we like to say, time is money when you're doing business. If you go and do a Google search and your search is slowed down and you become annoyed and try to go to another search engine, would Google lose money conceivably? Or maybe a better example is some of the services like Google Docs. If those systems running those services receive a 30% performance hit and you become annoyed and say, I've had enough of this, I'm going to go to open source. I'm going to use LibreOffice instead of using Google Docs. Conceivably, yes, it could cause damage to these companies. Would Google, as an example, sue Intel? Not likely. Me, as a small-time person, am I going to go sue Intel and be a part of the class action? I'm going to say yes, but here's why. Not because I actually think I'm going to get anything out of it. I'm going to say yes because I'm always curious to see what the overall outcome is. Are we talking about that $3.27 coupon that I can use towards my next purchase of an Intel processor? Okay, well, you know, wow, that would be great, but more for a curiosity thing for me. I'd like to see what the overall outcome is. With these class action suits, though, it's going to be years before any of us find out, to be honest. Tyler, I don't think Intel really was aware, or if they were, they decided not to say anything. You think about the intellectual knowledge that Intel has in the process of creating these processors. There's a good chance that they did know, but I don't think we'll ever prove that. If it was proven, then we can show actual damages. Because remember, just because we know about the bugs today doesn't mean they haven't been used to actually gather information from the memory in our computers. I mean, it's entirely possible. I really worry less for us with personal computers than I do about when we say make an online credit card purchase and we're using a server or a cluster of servers that is taking that information down and storing it in memory temporarily while we make a purchase. When you look at a public-facing network that a company runs that, say, is doing credit card transactions, they're much more likely to be under constant attack versus my personal computer. So I would be more concerned about personally identifiable information, PII, that we have that's out there on servers that potentially could be stolen when it is in memory. So yeah, I do have a concern about that. Yeah, they have known since at least June. That's what I understand. Gray, did you update your servers? I'm curious if you ran the patching. If you're running Linux and you did Linux patches, you're going to be fine. Microsoft released a Windows 10 patch, and if you are on the latest version of High Sierra for Macs, you should be okay now. I think it's a .2 release. I can't remember the exact number. Yeah, I would, Gray. I would recommend it. Hard to say which one of the updates when you're doing a Linux update. With Linux, of course, I always look to see if the kernel's getting updated. When I run servers, I'm a little nervous about updating the kernel because you never know what it can break. So I always make sure I have the last 3 or 4 versions of the previous kernel. But I think this is something that's going to have to be a kernel update. I try to do updates at least twice a week on my Linux machines. Sometimes I get way behind and I end up with 600 or 700 megabytes worth of updates, which is kind of crazy, but it does amaze me how fast these operating systems turn over. You know, they talk about how the human body, basically every 7 years or something like that, every single cell in your body's been replaced. It's actually the same way with operating systems, but I actually believe it's even faster. Looking at the amount of code that gets updated in OSs stuns me. I will do an update maybe after 1 or 2 weeks, and again, like I said, I might see 700 megabytes, 1 gigabyte worth of updates that are replacing currently installed packages. It's like you have a whole new OS every 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah. Okay, so next, well, we talked about replacing the x86 architecture, the current for-profit model of processors. Maybe in the future, I think we're talking about 5 to 10 years before we even see anything where we could actually get our hands on a physical processor. And if you think about it, if it's open source, guess what else would have to be replaced? The motherboard, because the socket is proprietary for Intel processors and AMD processors, so you can't just buy a new processor and put it on your current board. Unfortunately, there would have to be a unique socket type, which means more than likely there would have to be a new motherboard. So it's going to be a while before we see that. Okay. Amazon Echo selling secret ads. This really freaked me out. Here's the thing. I read 2 articles about this. The first one was this one that talked about how Amazon Echo devices, of course, as you know, they have Alexa built in. These things are actually selling ads to us, and they do it in such a sophisticated manner you probably won't even know. So I'll give you an example. In one of the examples they were talking about it, say a shopper says, like right here, Alexa, remind me to buy toothpaste the next time I go to the store. Alexa might say, okay, do you want to get some Colgate toothpaste? So who paid for that? Well, the company that produces Colgate actually paid to have that idea put in your mind when you go to the store. You know what? I should get Colgate toothpaste. It's probably better than other toothpaste. Another example they gave, you're trying to clean off your countertop and you think, okay, Alexa, what would work well for me to clean my countertop off? Now, you would hope anyway that it would be something generic, but more than likely, I'm not going to say more than likely, but let's say company XYZ decides to advertise their bleach cleaner that they have. So you know how you can get the spray cleaners with bleach in it? XYZ company recommends this cleaner for your countertop to get it as clean as possible. And they couch it in such a way that it doesn't sound like an ad, and you're thinking, I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to buy that. Alexa, put that on my list. That right there is a big problem with me. So how do we know if we're getting an ad or not? That's really scary. Now, here's the other thing that scares me. I don't know if you've noticed. So I was on my smartphone, and I went ahead and put Amazon Music on here because I really enjoy listening to different music. Alexa is built in to the Amazon app. Not too surprising, right? Because it is an Amazon product, so they're going to try and push Alexa, you know, and you can talk to the Amazon Music app and have it select music for you, or you can say, you know, play me 60s music, Alexa. Kind of creepy. But the worst part of it is, this other article that I read is that Amazon is pushing hard to get Alexa in everything. So as I understand it, they're going to be putting Alexa in bathrooms. I don't know why. I don't understand why. And I'm afraid if we're talking about public bathrooms, they're talking about putting it into smartphones. They're talking about putting it into watches. So if you have a smartwatch that you use, pretty much any electronic device, your refrigerator, you open the door, you're like, I need to buy a gallon of milk. Alexa will be there to help you and remind you what kind of milk to buy, right? This really freaks me out. I'm not going to say it's an out-and-out betrayal of our privacy, but it's darn close. I don't know if anybody remembers Samsung getting in hot water over their TVs. Their smart TVs actually actively listen to everything you're saying and try to train themselves to listen for your voice. That's kind of scary. What's really scary is they record everything as well and upload it to a server for better analysis. Here's the thing. They actually say in their fine print that if you do get a Samsung TV, you need to be aware that everything that is happening on that TV when it's on and you are in the room can be heard and will be recorded. Can you disable it? Yes, you can disable it. So privacy, I think we're going to see a major change in our environment. I remember, thinking about privacy and thinking, well, I really think I should shut my smartphone off and power off my TV, but even with a Samsung TV or a smartphone, unless you literally power them down and take the battery out, it is possible, although unlikely, but possible that they could still be able to hear. These devices could still hear what you're saying. I don't know what to think about that. Yeah, smart homes are going to be fun. Yeah, NSA is Amazon's biggest customer. Yeah, I don't doubt that, Gray. Yeah, I agree, Tyler. Google is the king when it comes to selling you ads and doing quite a good job at tailoring those ads for you. Scary but true. So, what you say might be something you really have to think about, whether in your own home or you're out in public. One of the things that occurred to me, now where I live in Michigan, in the city I'm in, occasionally there are murders, God forbid, or accidents, like somebody might get run over in the road or whatever. What I find very interesting is the sheer number of physical cameras that are available in area businesses on the road that actually record what happened. And the first thing the police do, right, there's an accident on a road, somebody gets run over, it's a hit and run. They go to all the area businesses around the area where the individual was hit, and they ask if you have any camera footage or any cameras pointing towards the road. In that same vein, we're going to be in a position where simply talking in your car or saying something out loud, your dog does something, I'm going to kill you, and then all of a sudden the police show up at your front doorstep because Alexa called the police for you. That is really spooky. Now, I don't know, the link isn't here anymore, but there was a link for Google's smart device. I forget what they call it, but it basically overheard a conversation between a man and a woman who were fighting, and he said he was going to kill the woman. Google actually called the police because he actually said that. He told the woman in the argument, go ahead, call the police. Go ahead and call the police. So you know what Google did? That device, it called the police. So you're really going to have to be careful, and I don't think it's going to be something we're going to be completely aware of. To add to that, privacy-wise, now it isn't quite an iPhone issue so much as a Android issue, but there are hundreds upon hundreds, if not thousands of games that are actually actively listening for your voice and listening to what you're watching on TV to analyze your surrounding and what is happening, especially with listening to your TV. Tell me that isn't spooky. That's so spooky. I know. How do we stop getting microphones everywhere? At least with a desktop computer, you can power it off and you power off the plug bar, it's off. But with the sealed battery in this phone, I can't pop the battery out. And I'm not saying I'm going to. I'm not going to get paranoid, but the invasion of privacy is on, and it's only going to get worse, and it's an exponentially developing problem that, in my opinion, is going to be shocking. We're going to get to the point with facial recognition of systems and cameras placed everywhere. They become so much more inexpensive, and every device sold with a microphone that's listening, that's going to be pretty wild. You really can't even take a walk in the woods and mumble to yourself. You never know what's going to happen anymore. Passerby could have their phone on. You never know. All right. I think we've killed that one. Now, this one's a little bit complicated, and it's a little bit difficult to explain, but if you get a chance, and we're on number 4, by the way. Well, we got 11 viewers. Yeah, the home state of Stevie Wonder, yep. Tyler, I don't know if all this surveillance could help things get solved faster. The reason being, these companies are not going to provide any information to any law enforcement agency unless they are compelled to do so, or they feel it's in their best interest or the interest of the public. But in the reality, I don't think they care so much about the public interest so much as they do themselves. And providing information to a law enforcement agency, I hate to say it, is kind of looks like snitching. So do you guys remember when I don't want to call him a terrorist, but he really was. He went in, he shot up a bunch of people in LA, and he had an Apple phone, and they were trying to break into the phone, and they were trying to compel Apple to do it. And Apple said, no, we're not going to do it I don't know if they got an order, a court order to do it, but they refused to do it. So the FBI went elsewhere and actually found software technology, I believe it was from Israel, that they could use to crack into that phone. I personally understood Apple's position, and it's somewhat horrifying to think that it's that easy to break into a phone or any other device you might use. So I really don't see companies as just being forthcoming and handing out information to law enforcement agencies unless they do get a proper court order requiring that they do release the information. Now, releasing information you know about is very different than asking a company to break or decrypt technology that they have created to encrypt a phone. So there's a big difference. Now, if that particular phone had been unencrypted, well, no, that wouldn't make any sense, and they could just get into it. So it's kind of a fine line. If you're trying to compel a company to break their own technology and then publicly everybody knows that they can do that, their sense of security and their own privacy is going to drop. I don't know where else they can go. If you already have an iPhone, what are you going to do? Get an Android? Not very likely, but I could see where it kind of makes the public image of a company look bad if indeed they're breaking their own phones to get the information in there decrypted so that they can provide it to law enforcement. So I can understand. I don't think you can compel a company with a court order and say you have to decrypt your own device. If the technology was already there and they say, yes, we can open this device, I think they could be compelled to do that. Yes. Martin, that's really intelligent. We need to find the needles, not make haystacks. We pretty much do. The FBI and the CIA are really, really good at creating massive volumes of information. Well, I'm going to say data, raw data, not information. They create massive volumes of raw data, and not only can they not mine it for those needles in that haystack like Martin's talking about, they don't even share it with each other. So pre 9/11, before Homeland Security and all that, FBI and CIA were at odds with each other, and they wouldn't share information back and forth, which is appalling to think about. But they have massive, massive, huge databases, just massive, and for them to actually find what they're looking for is quite difficult, in all honesty. Okay, anyway, I got off topic here. I wanted to go back to number 4. So I don't know if any of you have watched this video. If you get a chance, the channel is called Adored TV, and he talks about the Great Coffee Lake con job. How can I make a very, very long story short? The guy here on Adored TV, this is not a video for the faint of heart, because it's 26 minutes of pure quality technical data, and you have to watch the video very carefully and very slowly. But basically what this person is saying, and I kind of have to agree with him. I'm going to say I do agree with him. So Intel releases these new processors, Coffee Lake, and basically what they are is a Kaby Lake processor with additional cores. Now the thing is, what appears to be happening is the processors that are released to reviewers are cream of the crop. I don't know if anybody's heard of the term called binning, but basically Intel, for example, will create an 8700K processor with 8 cores. Well, 6 cores, I believe it has. And they run it through testing, and they find out that it actually fails at optimum levels. So they say, okay, well, could we release it as an 8700 processor? No, it failed at that level too. Well, let's keep going down. Could we run it as an i5 at 8400? So the part number 8400. Yes, we can do that because it's going to be running much, much slower. It's going to be using the cores in a completely different way, and power consumption will be much lower, so less heat to dissipate, less issues with it becoming unstable because we're running it much slower. So basically, with that binning concept in mind, what Intel is doing here is taking these processors that they're sending out, and this is something that's been going on forever and a day, but it basically, this author, Adored TV, revealed that these particular processors, the Coffee Lake processors, two things were going on. One, reviewers that are big are receiving the cream of the crop, the most overclockable processors. Whenever I watch processor reviews, I'm looking at only the actual processor rated speeds, not overclocking. I'm always interested to see what their actual speeds are, because more than likely that is what I will run it at. And the other thing is, if we want to remain consistent, we can't really guarantee and see how one person overclocks versus another person overclocks. So if we have all the benchmarks, and overclocking is fine, it's always good to see what this processor is capable of. But if we look at its base level, what it is normally going to run at, we get a better idea of what we're looking at as far as the potential for its performance. So these guys here, these reviewers, receive these processors, they're cream of the crop. The other thing that happened here was some of them used Asus motherboards. Now, Asus motherboards have a processor function called MCE, multi-core enhancement. Basically, what it means is automated overclocking. So it's actually a really cool feature. So what it does is it takes that processor and it will ramp up all the cores as high as it can, provided it's within heat dissipation, processor stepping, all the different frequencies that are required for that processor, and it doesn't overheat or cause the processor to become damaged. So what happened? Well, these four reviewers here, Hardware Canucks, JZ 2 cents, or is it J's 2 cents, Gamers Nexus, and Linus Tech Tips, all received higher scores. So on the one hand, it's a little bit sloppy of the reviewers to not have turned off MCE and say this is a base score. They were actually saying these were base scores, but they weren't. So what was the damage that was done? Well, if you watched one of these videos and said, do I really need to make the change to a Coffee Lake processor? And you compare these scores to the scores of a Kaby Lake processor, you may say, you know what? I think I will go out and get that. And then you receive your chip, right? Or you buy a ready-made computer and you end up down here in these scores. So you try to overclock it. And one, you didn't get the Intel cream of the crop processor. So it does overclock some, but not as well as these processors, because remember, these reviewers get the best possible processor. So the cream of the crop that comes out of that particular factory is sent to these reviewers. And you don't have an Asus gaming board that costs $100, $200, $300. And in the case of, and this is an example of an actual system, the HP Omen, it's scoring about 1230. So what this reviewer is saying, Adored TV, is he's saying this is not actually the norm. Down here is actually the norm. So if you have a Kaby Lake processor with 4 cores instead of 6, and you're getting about 1,000, and you look at this percentage increase, 1,230 over 1,000 versus 1,579 over 1,000, would you be more inclined to buy a Coffee Lake processor if it had such a huge increase in performance? I would think that I would, right? Now, here's the problem. Intel is playing the reviewers, and I think it would be accurate to say that the scores you're seeing that these reviewers are actually getting are not the norm. And I would think that they would want to admit that too. I don't have a problem with them accidentally leaving MCE on, and I honestly don't have a problem with any of these reviewers. Jay's 2 Cents, Hardware Canucks, I love these guys. I watch them all the time. I watch Linus. Gamers Nexus, I don't watch as much, but I don't feel like any of these reviewers were lying to us or anything like that. I think that one MCE was on, but that's a nice feature. So it tells you what the potential is that you're going to, the maximum potential you could get out of that processor. But it would be nice to see the baseline with that particular feature turned off. Yes. Martin says, wouldn't be surprised Intel uses speculative execution for quite some time. Sorry guys, my voice is starting to go. So we're going to wrap this up pretty quick. But here's the surprising thing. At least on Twitter, terrible picture of Jay-Z. Sorry, buddy. Well, Jay, I should say. Jay's 2 Cents and Hardware Canucks were really hard on Adored TV for the video he came out with. So he released another video. It's definitely worth watching. I think they're all basically making a big to-do about nothing, because I don't feel like any of these guys were trying to mislead anybody. I think they were doing the best job they could, and kudos to them, because I'm not somebody who's going to be able to get a $300 motherboard and, you know, an $800 processor and slap it together. I could have just as easily made that mistake, or others, so I don't see it as a big deal. And Jay-Z in this video, he does go back and explain, here's why I got that particular score, because I did have MCE enabled. Well, it's a function of the motherboard, so unfortunately, yes, that's going to happen. Now, the question becomes, though, with that feature enabled, are we testing the board or are we testing the CPU? Because remember, really down here, if you are like me, an average consumer, and you buy an average processor and you have an average motherboard, so you got the spectrum of, you know, the $50 super cheap motherboards and the $300 or $400 really expensive motherboards, and you're thinking, if I could just land at like $150, I would feel pretty good about that. And you get a processor that isn't very tolerant of overclocking, because you remember, you could have one i8700K, I could have another one. You might get 5 gigahertz and I might only get 4.4 or 4.5 gigahertz or whatever. So my maximum overclock might be considerably slower. Now, that's the nice thing about the MCE feature, but most boards, well, actually only Asus at this point has it, do not have that overclocking, auto overclocking functionality built in. So you're probably going to see scores like this. Partly due to Intel's subterfuge, sending the best products to the reviewers, partly because of the motherboard feature, and honestly, human error. I mean, it's going to happen. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you're watching these reviews, you know, I always feel when I see them, I'm like, you know, I never get that score because I don't have the quality of equipment that they have. And quite frankly, that's okay. So I would find these acceptable if I was looking to buy a brand new processor motherboard combo, because I know I'm not up here with the caliber of equipment that they have. Does that make sense? Did you really? Franco worked at a Lucent plant. So you must have seen a lot of that where processor binning, right? Well, this one's cream of the crop. This is our high level processor, whatever, gold standard. This one didn't make it quite so good. We're going to have to turn off some of the cores. We're going to call this, you know, the bronze level. So it's more basic processor, but we can charge less for it. We can call it the i3 or i5 or whatever, and we'll make a little bit of money on it. I think that's reasonable. All right. Well, anyway, if you get a chance, watch this video. I am going to warn you, though, you want to be fairly alert and awake because it is a onslaught of technical data, but it's so fascinating. But you really do. It's like one of those movies people tell you you really do have to pay attention to, like, every minute of this. It's one of those deals. And Jay-Z over here, I keep calling him Jay-Z. Jay has a reply to that particular video by Adored TV. Have a look at it. I do not in any way suggest that these reviewers are dishonest. That is not the case. I love watching these guys. I always take what I see with a grain of salt. A grain of salt, because I know that they're human. Intel's kind of being sneaky. AMD, I'm sure, does the same thing. Or any of the video card vendors, you know they do. They send their best video card they have that they have tested and pushed to the max. They're not going to send one that, you know, just came out of the factory and that hasn't been tested. Right? All right, Tiger, take care. All right, last thing I have for you tonight. So I did a little bit of talking about Mozilla and Firefox and my opinion on it. Oh boy. Well, the first problem with Mozilla is that the Mozilla Foundation, which is a not-for-profit, is actually owned by the Mozilla Corporation, which is a for-profit company. So I don't know if anybody's done this. Let me run Firefox. I hope it's around. I know I didn't uninstall it. Let's open a new tab. Wow, I'm surprised it's not showing up. I don't know if anybody has seen it with their version of Firefox, but there was at the bottom of any new open tabs, basically what it would show is this request for you to donate to the Firefox and Mozilla Foundation to ensure open source and openness and transparency in software. You know, here's the thing. The corporation Firefox has made a lot of money on the properties that they own, and that includes Firefox. Now you may notice over here I'm using WaterFox. Will I still use Firefox? Yeah, for sure. Will I make changes? Yes, I will, to protect my privacy. There's a couple of different ways that you can do it. Yeah, you can turn off the donation and a couple of other things. I don't know why I closed Firefox. Let's bring it back up real quick. One of you guys gave me this information. I don't remember who it was. It was in one of my videos, but if you go into About Config and do a search for telemetry, of course you got to spell it right, telemetry. So there's quite a bit of different services and functions in Firefox that are actually sending back information to the Firefox project, Mozilla project. Upon advice by one of you guys, you can actually go in and turn off the telemetry. So, for example, first shutdown ping, not 100% sure what that is, but by default, that particular item is true. Now, I just had an update for Firefox, so I think some of these basically are new, so I can just double click it and turn it off. And I was kind of curious, if I turned these off and made them false, would that make Firefox not work correctly? And as far as I can tell, no, everything is still working fine. But it is something to consider. And if you do turn off all of the telemetry, I mean, you could just turn it back on. You could too, if you wanted to, clear these strings out. I have not bothered to do that. So archive telemetry, turn off. Yeah, quantum. So Martin, I don't know about you, but with the new Firefox Quantum, I can't actually say I've noticed a render speed increase of websites over the older Firefox. So I did a little bit of testing and I brought up the same sites on both WaterFox and Firefox Quantum. I didn't see much of a difference. I didn't see any difference, to be honest. The only difference I did see was on one site, and it was a little bit faster on WaterFox. Now, this might even help you speed things up a bit if you do turn off telemetry. Anyway, that's what I decided to do. And for me, I would like to think that this would protect at least a little bit of your privacy. There's no real guarantee. Anyway, again, I'm off topic. You guys let me get off topic. Yeah, they do. They want to keep people hyped. You're right, Eel. Mozilla accidentally was saving crash reports since Firefox 52, which was back in March of 2017. So all these crash reports, even if you turned off the crash report being sent to Mozilla, it was sent anyway. That's not the worst part. The worst part is there was personally identifiable information, not necessarily about you, but the IP address of your system configuration information that has been stored since March of 2017 if you had a crash in Firefox, even if you turned off crash reporting. This is a problem. We're talking about a company here that sadly is owned by a for-profit corporation. Now, I'm not saying they did it on purpose. I don't think that at all. I just call this very, very sloppy. Now, I gotta give Mozilla a little bit of credit here. They didn't have to tell us about this, but they did. So at least you know, and they claim they're going to delete this information, and I hope that they do. I don't know how we can prove that they do, but I feel like Mozilla, the foundation, will act in good faith and they will delete the data. Why did the information come out? I always think that it's because somehow the public found out. If a company offers up information like this of their own accord, I consider that honorable. If they're forced into that position because somebody outside realized what was happening and threatened or did report on it, then it really puts egg in the face of the Mozilla Corporation and subsequently the Mozilla project and Firefox. So it's all about privacy once again. Now the thing of it is, even WaterFox will report data. So I don't know if WaterFox actually turns off crash reporting. Even though I have turned it off, that doesn't mean it's off, right? It may need a patch because the WaterFox browser is based on the Firefox 56 source code. We don't know. So it's possible that you might get an update that does not report the crashes faster on Firefox than you would on WaterFox, which is supposed to be a more private version of Firefox. It's like a catch-22. I swear to God, you cannot win. Yeah, I would have to agree with you. CST 498. Boogie says boring, next topic. Well, sadly, my friend, that was the last topic I had for you. Anybody else want to discuss anything? The browser I use, Franco, is WaterFox, and again, it's hard to say if WaterFox is as private as Firefox. We can hope. Now, we could have a look in the About config and see if there's any telemetry showing up at all. So there is some telemetry showing up in WaterFox, but it already is set for false, which I have not done. There is one piece, the toolkit telemetry. I might as well set it for false. Error reporting. So we do have a URL. We could probably wipe these URLs and then we wouldn't have to worry about it. Viacom x86 processors in late 2018. Viacom? We talking about the media company that makes movies? And eBoogie asks, is mobile app development in a slump? You know, that's kind of outside my area of expertise. I don't know about a slump, but I think that mobile app development has an issue with a massive glut of garbage. How many mobile apps do you really use? I mean, looking on my phone, and I'm talking about use every day. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Nine, 10, 11. Clock, notes for iPhone, Facebook Messenger because my family keeps messaging me that way, Facebook, YouTube Studio, Amazon Music, Google Drive, Slash.Reader, Dig, and the built-in news app with my iPhone. I did put Twitter on here, but I almost never use it. And I have Firefox on here. The WaterFox browser isn't very good. It sucks. So I use Firefox. The only thing I hate about this iPhone is it will not let me choose my default browser. I have to have Safari be the default, even though I can copy the URL and send it to Firefox. To me, it's really annoying. But, oh, and I do have my car insurance here that I use. But really, you know, the thing is, to me, the apps that are being developed, some of them are pure garbage. They have, well, they do. They have adware built in. They have, in some cases, spyware. Android has a glut of applications that have built-in spyware and adware. There's just so much garbage out there. For every one good app, there's probably 1,000 garbage apps. And to me, it's a real turnoff. I don't really find that I'm interested in going into the app stores. And it's like, well, if I do download this game, is it going to listen to see what I'm watching on TV? And what else is it going to listen to? And will it activate the camera? I really don't know. Is it watching my key presses? Is it a keylogger? So what apps do you guys use? Yeah, they're either Microsoft, Martin says, which is basically a PC, or some kind of sucky tablet, except the Samsung Galaxy tablets, yeah. I still have the Samsung Galaxy Note 2014 model. I really like it. It's got the pen on it. It's my favorite tablet. Bought that a couple years back, and I haven't really saw a reason to get a new one. It still performs really well for what I use it for. Ooh. WaterFox browser fake on Android. Well, the one I tested was actually on the iPhone, but it was garbage. I deleted it immediately. Yeah, you know, I could believe that it is fake because in reality, you have to sideload pretty much the browser on WaterFox on any platform. So, yeah, I would believe it's fake. What's Nextdoor? I've never heard of it. You guys aren't going to make me Google it, are you? Yeah, Martin, are you using iPhones? Okay, I have heard about Nextdoor. Boogie says it's a porn app. Pretty funny. Okay. I never enabled Facebook Neighborhood, Martin. It just seems super creepy to me. In order to see, you have to be seen, which kind of makes sense. But I thought, you know what? If anybody really wants to contact me that's in the neighborhood, they know where I live. They can give me a call or text me. So I never bothered to enable that feature. So I doubt I will use Nextdoor. I really don't have any games on my iPhone either. As a matter of fact, and this will probably be, oh, by the way, I do use Amazon as well, Amazon Shopping. I don't know how much I trust it, though. You know, my whole thing about it is, will that app be able to see what I'm doing in other apps or know what I'm doing in iOS? Is it aware of my location? The one thing I do like about the iPhone is you get a more granular approach to what features you can let an app access, like your camera or your microphone or whatever. So to location, camera, and microphone, I usually say no. And then when I need to turn it on, if I actually need it, then I turn it on. Good question. I honestly don't remember. It's KDE Plasma right now, but in the settings, I made quite a few changes. Blue Sora. I just went gung-ho. I went to Get New Theme and I downloaded a whole bunch of them, although many of them haven't showed up. And I like this one best. You know, I didn't think I would. I thought I would like Glassified or something like that much better, and I ended up liking the Blue Sora one better. I honestly have not used Vivaldi. Are we talking about mobile application or anything? Yeah, Facebook does ask too many questions. Boogie, you're right. It's funny because I went through and I've made so many changes. I'm actually using the Breeze cursor theme, which I think is the default for Plasma. App style. Window decorations. I'm actually using Air Oxygen. So this is the one thing I don't like. with KDE, you have to go to like 10 different places to set up your overall theme, which kind of annoys me. Now, I did download a couple of other ones. I liked Transparent quite a bit, but I ended up liking this one best. And it has that semi-transparent look, which I do like. And what's GNOME using? I really haven't done many changes in GNOME at all. The thing is, honestly, I used to not bother at all theming Fedora, mainly because it seems like I would go through and do all the theme changes, and then you do like a major update to, say, the next Fedora, and half of it would be broken. So I got to the point where I wanted to be able to set up Fedora very quickly, and my main focus was on the apps that I used, not on the theming or the look of the desktop. So I went with the default, but to me the default is so boring. They could do so much better. I don't know why they don't make it prettier. Okay, they don't need to, but that's my take on it. I have heard many people say this looks like an older version of Windows and it's ugly, but I actually like it. I mean, for me, it works really well. So the main reason I stick around in KDE is because the applications scale really well, and most of the applications, well, not most of, but the critical one that I'm using is my editor, which is, of course, Kdenlive. And it just looks best in KDE. And that's the way it is. Is it usable in the other desktop interfaces? For sure. Aha. I had a terrible time with screen tearing on my Lenovo Yoga 910 and my Yoga 2 Pro. I could not get it to go away. If you look at some of my older videos, you'll see the tearing up on the top. It looked just really, really bad. And it was so frustrating. Now, one of the things that I did to remedy the situation was started using OBS Studio. Before I was doing that, I was using a couple of other different applications, and I can't even remember anymore, to do video capture. And they were part of the problem. The other thing I do remember, when I hit about Fedora 25, the screen tearing thing went down considerably. Now, we're doing a live stream right now, so there may be more screen tearing than normal, but I would say the three things that I did that helped me most was a newer version of Fedora, OBS Studio, and a new computer with more standardized hardware. When you're using the Intel on a chip built-in graphics, you're going to have to expect more screen tearing with Fedora, or probably any version of Linux, which is very unfortunate. In my case, when I had a system that had a more standardized video card, so I've got this Dell down here with an RX 580 video card, gameplay, all the issues that I was having on my Yoga 910 disappeared in Fedora on this new computer, or even on my older desktop, which had a Radeon HD 4290 built in on the chipset video, and I didn't have a screen tearing issue with that system either. So really getting on the latest Fedora using OBS Studio made a huge difference. Pizza loving nerd, I would like to. That's a whole nother conversation, and I don't even think my YouTube channel is all that particularly good. I have a lot of room for improvement. I've got a little over 6,000 subscribers now, and I get about 100,000 views a month. But there's so many YouTubers out there that do so much better. Typically what I do is watch YouTube videos about people who produce their YouTube channel, and I learn a lot of cool tips. I did some of the basic stuff. You know, I'm on a pretty tight budget. I got the new 920 Logitech camera. I have a light kit up here I got for $100. It's daylight fluorescent with box lights. Halfway decent setup, you know, without spending a whole ton of money. I did a lot of research on fine-tuning things with the camera, this Logitech C920. It really wasn't very sharp, so I had to work with that and make some changes. I use an application in Linux called GovCView, GUVCView, however you want to pronounce it. And this application lets me actually make setting changes to my camera. And I found out that the lower you go on the gain, the sharper the image from the camera looks, but everything has a trade-off. So the lower the gain, you know, the more brightness you have to have, which can wash out the image. But I do like that you can save profile. So I basically will save my profile, and when I come to start creating a video, I'll just load the profile back up and I'm ready to go. I don't have to make any other setting changes to the camera. I don't have to sit here and go through each one of these settings and fine tune it. Now this is Linux land. Of course, if you're in Windows, that's all built in to the driver and the application that comes with it. But you will need this application if you want to control the camera. So, I mean, it's just little things for me. I've just, you know, I bought a decent microphone. This was one of my first purchases, the Snowball. I don't know if you can see it here. There it is. So this particular microphone, regular $49. I went to Best Buy. I got an open box version for $39, and I had a $10 gift certificate, so I got it for $29. It's a USB microphone. It's functional. It works good enough. I've actually had criticisms from people, you know, about some of the gear I have, but I'm not the type of YouTuber that has premium equipment. That's really not what I'm about. I am happy with my 6,000 subscribers, so I don't feel like I need, you know, 2 or 3 million subscribers. Would I take them? Sure, why not? You know, if we can get 3 million people interested in Linux and some of the other stuff that I talk about, yeah, sounds good to me. But, you know, what I have is what I have. So as some of the money rolls in, I tend to upgrade the equipment. I just set up the studio here behind me maybe a month ago, 2 months ago. And it's been a, you know, slow process, but everything, you know, you're not going to get everything you want instantly. It's kind of a, as I can do it, I do it. And I enjoy doing it. So that makes the biggest difference. Thank you, Gray. I actually set the bit rate for 6,000. I figured I'm going to try and get the best bit rate that I can. And 6,000 is the cutoff for OBS as far as streaming. At least that's what Google will accept. Did I say Google? YouTube? They're all the same, right? That's the maximum YouTube will accept. And so I went ahead and set it for 6,000 bits upstream. I upgraded my internet service. We talked about it on the last live stream to 150 megabits down, 20 megabits up. So I'm able to do that with the live stream, because you figure 6,000 kilobits is really what, 6 megabits, 60 megabits? I can't do math. I'm doing terrible. Anyway, I'm going to have to check out Manjaro. Is that how you pronounce it? 100% recommend? Okay. Where did I download it from? CST, I actually downloaded it right from the GUI itself. So over here in System Settings, get over here. Workspace theme, desktop. There is the option to get new theme. I have had a, you know, it kind of varies. Sometimes it works great, sometimes it doesn't. And I went to ratings because I wanted to see the ones that were rated higher. And I just clicked install. And it would install the theme I wanted. I do like that about KDE. There are tools that you can get for GNOME that will let you do the same thing. But it's all built into KDE, which I think is kind of cool. And same thing if I go to, let's see here, window management, and was this the one I was in before? Man, I forget stuff so fast. Nah, it wasn't desktop behavior. Nope. Yes, Windows decorations. I forget this so fast. Anyway, you can get new decorations, and your mileage may vary. The thing about some of these are, I usually go by rating because it's usually most likely to work best. You know, you can do a search if you're interested in something that looks like Mac. This one's pretty decent. It works best at 1080p. I found that if I try to use this one in 4K on my laptop, it doesn't look quite right. Let's see if it installs. There we go. Sometimes they don't show up. Also, I really like the kind of retro OS X, so I don't know where the decorations went that I tried to install. Sometimes they just don't install. I hate to say it, but the easiest way to deal with that is to reboot your system or come back a little later. So this is not 100% reliable. I'm sure you could do it manually with the command line, and normally I like doing things with the command line, but this is really easy. XFCE is good. My son uses XFCE. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people, pizza, criticize KDE, but I mean, it depends what experience you want. If everything's scaled perfectly in GNOME, I would probably use that more often with my 4K display. Now I have a 1080p monitor, so it would probably look great, but again, Kdenlive is it's serviceable, but it looks best in KDE, so that's the one I use. And overhead wise, I have heard that it has a little bit more going on as far as processes than GNOME does. The thing I like about GNOME is the interface is so futuristic. It's really, if you think about it, it could have been used on a tablet, it could have been used on a phone, it could be used on a computer. It can be used on my Yoga, you know, because you can flip the screen and you can basically treat it like a tablet. So the interface in GNOME 3X to me is brilliant. It remains to be seen if it's going to be adopted on a larger scale, but I do like it. I think it's pretty cool. It reminds me a lot of Mac OS. So a lot of functionality there is, quite frankly, very similar to Mac OS. I feel like GNOME 3, the whole point to them doing that was, one, they wanted to model Mac OS, and two, they saw what Windows was doing with live tiles with Windows 8 and Windows 10, and trying to create this unified interface that could be used on any hardware device, whether it was a phone or a tablet or a computer. And the developers at GNOME were saying, hey, let's be innovative, let's move forward here and create this interface that basically can be used on any device. That's my take on GNOME 3. I think it's a beautiful interface, so I think I'll do a video on that in the future for sure. I do too. Just something as simple as, you know, Dolphin to me is so much cleaner. I did do some tweaks in Dolphin here, but I really like it. And it's so customizable. There's so many cool things you can do to customize all the tiny little nuances, and it works well for me. I've probably gotten used to KDE Plasma more than GNOME at this point. So GNOME is a big paradigm shift, and if you're on that one, you're not likely to use KDE. And if you're a KDE kind of person, you're not likely to be using GNOME or XFCE or one of the other desktop environments. Yeah, Nautilus is curious. You know, the weirdest thing happened to me though. I tried to open up a zipped file in Nautilus, and no, I'm sorry. I tried to open it up in Dolphin. I right-clicked it, and it brought up a Nautilus window. And the only thing I can think is that it's a configuration that's in Fedora 27, because I originally downloaded the distro with GNOME on it by default instead of the spin that was KDE-centric. So maybe in the future I'll do a clean install and start with the KDE Plasma version. I gotta check out Manjaro. Everybody's talked about that. Mega Ninja, I recommend starting if you're just beginning to learn with something easy like Mint, Ubuntu, possibly Fedora. I've heard others say use Corora because it basically is Fedora but with all the settings and tweaks that you need. The only problem with those distros, of course, is my experience has been when I first started out with Linux, I would put Mint on a computer, for example, and actually the one I used back in the day was called Mandrake, and then it later became Mandriva, and it was very, very simple to use. The problem was, you know, being a novice user at the time with the desktop interface, if I broke something, it stayed broke. I didn't have a clue how to fix it, how to even go into settings or go in the command line and make a simple fix. So on one hand, you get this very simple to use interface that works well, but if you try to do something more advanced, you could end up breaking things. That's been my experience. MX Linux, I watched a video. If you watch Switch to Linux at all, and I know many of you probably do, he did a review of MX version 17. You might want to go check it out. I think he did it as a live stream. I watched that video, and MX has a beautiful interface, and it's definitely Linux simplified, and it's designed for users, not only those who are getting started out, but those who want a more refined experience without having to do a whole bunch of tweaks and skinning and all that stuff. Yeah, NVIDIA drivers are no fun. It's been a long time since I did NVIDIA drivers. The AMD GPU driver is built into Fedora 27. Well, actually, I think it's been around longer than that, but this is the first real AMD card I've had. And it was a simple matter to do DNF install AMD GPU, reboot the system, and I had the latest AMD drivers for Fedora 27. I have used this new system I have, the Dell 5675. It's got a Ryzen 7 1700 processor. I've played games while rendering videos on it, and it works great. So the AMD GPU driver seems to be fully functional. Ouch. I installed the wrong NVIDIA drivers and I couldn't play games. Been there, done that. Sometimes I have to walk away and just kind of pull my hair out for a few minutes and go, what did I do now? It can take me days to recover something like that. You know, even as advanced my experience is with Linux, I forget so much. And it's like, well, this is familiar, but I don't really remember how to fix it. I started a document called Linux Tips, and I'll throw something in there, but sometimes I forget to put it in there, and I'm like, oh man, I didn't put that tip in there to tell me how to reinstall this driver or fix this problem. It's one simple command, and I don't remember what it is. For sure. All right, folks, it's been about an hour and a half now. How many viewers did we end up with? Looks like 9. Well, maybe we'll have more when they go back and watch the live stream later, the recorded version. I want to thank you for hanging out with me. I've had a lot of fun. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for your comments. I'll look forward to seeing you again. I did work all day on a video about the Lenovo Yoga 2 Pro. I tell you, shooting these videos about hardware is so much more complicated than it seems. I literally have, gosh, let's see, pop-up file manager here. So the raw footage for this Yoga 2 Pro review, I've got to stitch all this stuff together. I started shooting at about 1 o'clock. Well, actually, I started setting up the studio at about noon, and I did not get done shooting the footage until 8 o'clock at night. Hardware reviews, doing those videos, to those YouTubers out there that can push those things out so fast, man, you're good. For me, it's an incredible amount of work. I'm not sure how many more hardware reviews I'll do. Usually what I do is grab a piece of hardware that I have already or I purchased and do a quick review on it. In this case, I used my son's Yoga 2 Pro and I compared it to my Yoga 910. Wanted to see how far things had changed between a 4th generation i7 processor and a 7th generation i7 processor. So it was a lot of fun, but I still haven't even edited it. I probably won't get to it until Monday. I'm going to take the day off tomorrow and watch football with some friends, but I will have the video out to you, I'm thinking Monday night, so keep your eyes peeled. You don't have to buy brand new hardware. You know, you can get older systems and they work just as well. All right, everybody. Tijaz, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. I do apologize. We covered that. So once I turn off the stream, the video will be uploaded to YouTube. Check it out, man. We talked about GNOME versus KDE and why I'm using it. And I talked a lot about how I really do like the new GNOME interface. All right, folks. Have a good night. Thanks for coming by, and I'll see you next time.